Meanwhile, the Trump administration is taking aim at Iran today with officially designating the country's Revolutionary Guards as a terrorist organization. Now, this could be seen as a setback majorly for those fighting in the Middle East. To learn more, we turn to former U.S. diplomat Jim Jatras. Thanks for joining us, Jim. Okay, so did the Trump administration labeling the IRGC as a terrorist organization only strengthen it today by legitimizing it within the region?
Well, I think in the introduction you said taking aim at. I think that is their goal. I don't think they're necessarily looking at strengthening or weakening, but rather their bigger picture of regime change in Iran. I don't think it necessarily strengthens the IRGC because I think they already have a reputation that is sympathetic to that side in the region. And of course, the people who are on the other side, then they'll be considered ratification of the way they already feel about it.
Well, does this latest move in combination with the sanctions that were already on there actually weaken Iran's national power, but does it from the inside, as the U.S. is hoping for?
I think that is the aim. I don't think it probably accomplishes that. I think to the extent to which Iranians, even ones who are not necessarily fond of the current government, feel that they're under attack and maybe facing a war, that there's going to be a rally around the flag effort. I mean, effect among people there. So I think it actually backfires in that regard, but I could be wrong.
Well, is that kind of the goal, as we've seen, instead of coming on from the outside, the U.S. tactic has been to destroy a regime from the outside? Is this possibly a different type of tactic than what we're seeing in other places around the world?
I think it's a hybrid tactic, if you will. Remember, we saw during the so-called Green Revolution a few years ago, the effort to try to foment rebellion within. As you know, there are a lot of partisans of the so-called People's Mujahideen who are very influential in the administration. And this is what had been listed as a terrorist group, a kind of a cockamamie melange of Islamism and Marxism. But for some reason, a lot of people in the administration and in Congress really think they're the greatest thing. They would like to parachute them in as a replacement government, like we put Ahmed Chalabi into Iraq. I think it's a pipe dream. There's no evidence that that group has any legs inside Iran.
Well, that's the thing. Supporters of this move feel that this designation will only impose further economic hardships on the Iranian people, ultimately devaluing their currency and frightening those away from foreign investments from coming into the land. Is that true? And do you think that will be to the benefit of the U.S.?
I don't think any of this is to the benefit of the U.S., and I think the whole policy is misguided in terms of whether it will further cut off international commerce with Iran, especially to scare European countries away from doing business with Iran. I think it will be part of that chilling effect. And as you say, this is designed to make the lives of ordinary Iranians as miserable as possible, just as we've used sanctions to make Venezuelans as miserable as possible. And then we turn around and say, oh, look what a bad government. Look how those people are suffering.
Well, that's what my question is. You mentioned Venezuela. We use sanctions all the time. Can you name me a time in history when actual sanctions have actually created a solution and not just made it a bigger problem throughout history in any of these theaters?
I really can't think of it. Well, the only thing I can think close to that with the sanctions that were on South Africa, when it was actually the South African government that decided to throw in the towel and go for majority rule. But in most other cases, it makes a lot of people miserable. I mean, there's the famous Madeleine Albright and 500,000 dead Iraqi children. We think it was worth it. That's usually the effect you get from these sanctions, which are a form of siege warfare that hurt the weakest in society every time.
Well, that's the question. You're supposed to try to motivate the people to overthrow their government, but how often is that successful if they're so weakened?
And it actually partakes of kind of a Bolshevik notion of revolution. When the people are so miserable, they all rise up and overthrow. That never, ever happens, has never happened in history, yet we keep trying it, and people keep suffering because of it.
Well, will the IRGC's role in defeating the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham, ISIS in Iraq, and Syria ultimately be detrimental, do you think, to Iran's national security?
I don't see how defeating ISIS is detrimental to Iran's national security. Despite some of the tall tales we're getting from some quarters that somehow Iran is in cahoots with al-Qaeda to try to fit it under the authorization for use of military force legally, which is a real stretch. No, of course, these are bitter enemies, and al-Qaeda has had a free reign in the region only because of our regime change operations. If we do succeed in bringing down the current government in Iran, I wouldn't be surprised if it helps al-Qaeda to blossom and groups like ISIS to blossom in the region.
And that's never a good thing. We see
I don't think so.
Growing, especially with the aid and the motivation of being against the U.S. Thank you so much for joining us, Jim.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.